Let's talk about Albert Bandura. Albert Bandura is a social cognitive theorist. He was born December 4th, 1925, in Alberta, Canada. He attended a small school and worked on the Alaskan Highway. Bandura worked with many interesting people, which encouraged him to have a keen appreciation for the psychopathology of everyday life. Bandura received his bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of British Columbia in 1949. He received his master's degree in psychology at the University of Iowa in 1951, and in 1952 he received his Ph.D. Bandura met his wife, Virginia Varnes, at the University of Iowa, where she was teaching nursing. They had 2 daughters together, Mary and Carol. Bandura spent a year as a clinical intern at a Kansas Guidance Center before moving to Stanford University. He is still at Stanford today. Theories and key terms. Consistency of human behavior. People are better at predicting their own behavior than the best personality test. The correlation between a person's performance on a personality test and their actual behaviors is very low. This is called the personality coefficient. This is not at the fault of the test, but rather because human behavior is simply not consistent. Reciprocal determinism. Person variables, situation variables, and behavior continuously interact with one another. Situation variables are the setting in which a person behaves. Person variables are how one analyzes a situation. Behaviors are actions that are chosen that use both a person's analysis of the situation and modifies the environment. Cognitive social variables. How individuals will interact with a situation. Cognitive social variables determines which of the many stimuli one faces will be perceived, selected, interpreted, and used. In social cognitive theory, personal variables are active cognitive processes that operate in the present. These variables provide dynamic reciprocal relationships between the person's behavior, and the environment. There are 5 cognitive social learning person variables. Number 1, encoding strategies, how we see things. We see different aspects of environment and assign different meaning to the stimuli selected. How one categorizes experience to provide consistency in behavior. Number 2, expectancies, what we think will happen. A. Behavior, outcome, expectancy. If I act in this way, it will have the following result. Without information about specific situation, people use past, similar experiences to create expectancies. If information is available, then one's expectancy change accordingly. B. Stimulus, outcome, expectancy. If event number 1 occurs, event number 2 will likely follow. Using past experiences and associations to deal with current experiences. C. Self-efficacy, expectancy. Concerns one's expectation of ability to behave effectively. Knowing what behavior would be effective in that situation, and to be able to perform that behavior. Self-efficacy, what a person is actually capable of doing. Perceived self-efficacy, what a person believes they are capable of doing. Number 3, subjective values. What is worth having or doing? Subjective values of a person determine what is worth having or doing. Behavior may not occur if there is no worth seen in the effort, even if the person has a strong behavior outcome expectancy and a strong self-efficacy expectancy. Number 4, self-regulatory systems and plans. How do we attain our goals? This is what makes it possible to attain goals we deem important. Human behavior is largely self-regulated. Performance standards are established, and we judge our behaviors based on those standards. Behavior is influenced by intrinsic internal reinforcement and punishment, rather than extrinsic external reinforcement and punishment. Number 5, competencies. What we are capable of doing. Through observational learning, people develop skills, concepts, and problem-solving strategies that are used to deal with an environment. These are not static, but active processes that can be used in a wide variety of situations. Competencies are tools that people can use in different ways. They are what a person knows and what they are capable of doing. Observational learning, learning versus performance. Social cognitive theory states that learning is not influenced by reinforcement. However, it is believed that reinforcement does have an impact on performance and perceptual processes. This is illustrated in the famous Bobo doll experiment. All the children were shown a clip where the Bobo doll is treated aggressively by a model. A model is anyone or anything that conveys information. Following the film, the children are split into groups. Let's call them A, B, and C. Group A and B are shown the second part of the clip, but with different endings. In Group A, children observe a model being praised for behaving aggressively to the Bobo doll. This is vicarious reinforcement, seeing someone else receive reinforcement for their behavior. In Group C, having only seen the initial part of the film, did not have reinforcement or punishment expectations, but they still learned the behaviors witnessed in the film by the model. For the second phase of the experiment, the same children were all offered an incentive, stickers and juice, and were asked to act like the model in the film. Even though the different groups had seen different outcomes, reward, punishment, or neutral, all the children acted like the model did. This shows how what is observed is learned. Performance depends on what the learner's behavior outcome expectancies are. This highlights how reinforcement affects performance but not learning. News and media as models. People can be influenced by what they see in the media through observational learning. An example of this would be a child watching a violent TV show where the criminal is unremorseful. This may influence a child to model themselves in that way. This is why right and wrong concepts play a key role in a person's development. Learning to behavior is a multi-step process. With media, what is observed is learned, but certain processes influence what is attended to and what gets retained. Then what is learned may be translated to behavior. 4 processes that influence behavior. Number 1. Attentional processes, aspects of environment that influence attention. This includes complexity, distinctiveness, and prevalence of stimulation. Models that are seen as similar to oneself, are respected and powerful, or are attractive, gravitate attention more than others. Can also include observer characteristics such as sensory capacities. An example of this would be the fact that blind and deaf people do not respond to the same stimuli as people with normal sight and hearing. Number 2. Retentional processes. Experience is stored either imaginatively or verbally. Without retention, learning is of no value. What is learned can either be retained as an actual cognitive picture or retained as words describing the experience. This also makes delayed modeling possible. Delayed modeling is translating the information observationally learned long after it has been learned. Motor reproduction processes. In order to perform what one has observationally learned, they must have the necessary motor apparatus. This can be affected by temporary problems such as injury, fatigue, or illness, or it can be a long-term condition like a physical disability. Complex skills need to be observed several times before they can be immediately translated into performance. Then they must be rehearsed to match the initial observed performance. Number 4. Motivational processes. There must be an incentive driving behavior. Person must believe that behavior will yield something valued, otherwise behavior will have no reason to occur. Reinforcement, direct or vicarious, provides the information for effective behavior development, outcome expectancies. Again, this affects performance, not learning. Bandura on observational learning and translation of learning into behavior. A person must 1. Observe something. 2. Remember what was observed. 3. Be able to perform the behaviors necessary to reproduce what was observed. And 4. Want to reproduce those behaviors. To some performance standard. A person experiences intrinsic reinforcement if the action meets or exceeds the standard, or a person experiences intrinsic punishment if the standard is not met. Let's talk about self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is what a person is capable of doing. Perceived self-efficacy is what a person believes they're capable of doing. This is influenced by previous direct or vicarious achievements and failures, when the model is similar to the person. Self-efficacy can be affected by stress. In high-stress situations, high arousal inhibits performance, and strong emotions correlate with feelings of self-inefficacy. Those with high self-efficacy typically have these characteristics. They set more challenging goals. They persist longer in pursuit of goals. They are more venturesome in their behavior. They recover quickly from setbacks and frustrations. And they experience less fear, anxiety, stress, and depression. Having one's perceived self-efficacy in line with their actual capabilities is the best situation. Human agency, the conscious planning and intentional execution of actions that influence future events. Efficacy beliefs are the foundation of human agency. Moral conduct. Standards of right and wrong are highly personal and come from direct and vicarious experience. Like performance standards, they are learned as a child and eventually internalized. Moral behavior is self-regulated and maintained independently from environmental consequences. If a person violates their moral standards, they will experience self-contempt. However, there are cognitive mechanisms that allow someone to act against their moral principles. These are called self-exonerating mechanisms. Self-exonerating mechanisms are one of the factors that explain why human behavior is so inconsistent. Self-exonerating mechanisms. Number 1. Moral justification. One's behavior is viewed as acceptable when it becomes a means to a higher purpose. An example of this would be, I committed the crime to provide for my family. Number 2. Euphemistic labeling. Calling something other than what it really is can allow someone to act against their morals without self-contempt. Examples: soldiers waste people rather than kill them. Number 3. Advantageous comparison. Comparing one's own action to something much worse to make theirs look trifling in comparison. Example: sure, I did that, but look at what they did. Number 4. Displacement of responsibility. Departing one's own moral principles because there is recognized authority sanctioning their actions. Responsibility then falls onto the authority figure. Example: Nazi prison commandants and staff felt little personal responsibility because they were simply carrying out orders in their eyes. Number 5. Diffusion of responsibility. When people make a decision as a group, where everyone is responsible. Example: I couldn't be the only one saying no. I believe a modern-day situation could be when a group of people go from peacefully protesting to violently rioting and destroying the area. Number 6. Disregard or distortion of consequences. People ignore or distort the harm that their action caused. Example: I just let the bombs go and they disappear into the clouds. Number 7. Dehumanization. When people see someone as subhuman and thus think they can be treated inhumanely. Example: English settlers dehumanize Native Americans, seeing them as savages, and why shouldn't we take their land? Number 8. Attribution of blame. Blaming the victim for something they did or said as the cause of the person's actions. Examples: rapists use victim blaming to justify the person's clothing caused them to rape them. Delay of gratification. Postponement of a smaller immediate reinforcer for a larger, more distant reinforcer. Experiments showed that preschool children with the ability to delay gratification grew up to have better social and academic skills in high school. Those who were able to self-distract, to not focus on immediate reinforcer, but rather ignore it and wait for a larger reinforcer, were able to effectively deal with pain, stress, and severe life crisis. Self-control is necessary to delay gratification. Without it, people are impulsive as non-human animals. Self-control and goal-oriented behavior is necessary for civilized living. Dysfunctional expectancies and psychotherapy. Psychological problems result from dysfunctional expectancies. Any therapy that corrects them is effective. Expectancies are usually based on real experience, but can be overgeneralized. When they are overgeneralized, it prevents the person from engaging in any type of experiences that would disconfirm them. This is defensive behavior based on a dysfunctional expectancy. Perceived self-efficacy can also influence dysfunctional expectancy. This means if a person feels that they are incapable of doing something, they will not try. A major goal of therapy is to improve a client's perceived self-efficacy. Changing how people felt about their capabilities can be done in different ways, such as participant or live modeling, systematic desensitization, and symbolic modeling. For example, we have our client Cody, who will portray having cynophobia, the fear of dogs. First, we'll demonstrate symbolic modeling. A person watches someone else experience what they have been avoiding. This is the second most effective method. The next example is of live modeling, the most effective method. The person experiences what they have been avoiding firsthand. The last demonstration is systematic desensitization. A person imagines interactions that they would typically avoid, starting with low anxiety and working up to high anxiety. This is the least successful method. Social cognitive theory view of human nature, freedom versus determinism. Humans are complex and rational, but it is not the same as saying they have free will. Bandura rejects that humans are autonomous, free to act independently of the environmental and personal influences. He also rejects the idea that humans respond mechanically to those influences. Bandura accepts reciprocal determinism. people influence both their environment and their behavior. Bandura is seen as a soft determinist, meaning he viewed human behavior as goal-oriented. Freedom is defined by the number of options available to people and their right to exercise them. The more behavioral alternatives, the greater the freedom of action. Chance encounter is defined by an unattended meeting of persons unfamiliar with each other. These can significantly impact one's lives and is one of the reasons for the unpredictability of human behavior. Think about how you met a friend. Maybe it's your best friend? Mind-body relationship. Cognitive events are a prominent role as a causative agent. Social cognitive theory does not accept psychophysiological dualism. Attempting to reduce psychology to biology serves no useful purpose. Summary. Human behavior is not consistent. People learn through observation, and performance is influenced by direct or vicarious reinforcement or punishment. A person must observe something, remember what was observed, be able to perform the behaviors necessary to reproduce what was observed, and want to reproduce those behaviors. Most human behavior is regulated. Performance standards are used to judge one's behavior. People intrinsically reward or punish themselves based on how they match up to their performance standards. People are greatly influenced by self-efficacy. Psychological problems arise from dysfunctional expectancies. Humans are thoughtful problem solvers who are dealing with the present and planning for the future. Well, that's all we have for Bandura. Thanks so much for watching.